evening, witches, warlocks, sorcerers, adepts, friends, fans, family, and followers to Season 5, Episode 8, I couldn't talk there, of the hit underground radio occult show known as Knights of the Nephilim, brought to you by Celestial Oddities Radio and the Coterie of Samil Arcane Occult Order. As always, I will be your host and guide on this mysterious journey into magic and mysticism, darkness and divination. I am Frater Crow, and it's a pleasure to have you listening in. Whether you're listening live, streaming after the fact, or you've downloaded this episode for on the go, I do want to thank you for your patronage and support. Just make sure you click the like, share, follow, and subscribe buttons on whatever platforms you're tuning in from. Whether you're someone who likes the live experience or visual experience, you can catch us across 4 different Facebook pages: Frater Crow, Knights of the Nephilim, Celestial Oddities Radio, and the Coterie of Samil. And that will be on there for 30 days before Facebook removes it. You can catch us on those, or you can catch it on the Knights of the Nephilim Frater Crow YouTube page, where it'll be housed permanently. Those are our live options. And we ask that you comment, you be a part of the show. We'll throw your comments up on screen. We'll read them off. You can ask our guest questions. We always like you to participate. This is as much as your show as it is ours. And then we have the after the fact option. What I mean by that is after these shows air every episode, I go ahead and drop the recorded episode on Spotify, iTunes, Apple, Google, Amazon, iHeartRadio, Deezer, Spreaker, CastBox, and every other platform you can think of for your listening pleasure. And we have a mixed crowd. Some people like that live experience or the visual side of things. I have a lot of people tell me they like to listen to it on their drive to work, while at the gym, and so forth. So we give you options for absolutely everyone. So make sure you check it out. But by clicking those buttons, it helps move us up the podcast community rankings, allows more people to discover the show, keeps you in the loop with new episodes as they air, and gives you unfiltered access to our past archives. Not only of this show, Knights of the Nephilim, jumping deep into occult and esoteric doctrine and ritual magic, but some of our other shows like Pair of Normal Guys podcast, where we dive heavily into paranormal and supernatural phenomena and bring on guests, take on phone calls from guests around the world like you, telling us your experiences of the unknown and unexplained. We have Caniculum Obscuritatis, teaching people how to build a practice from the ground up in occultism. We have Uncovering the Underground, interviewing and talking with artists of all kinds all over the world. And we have Last Call. Last Call is a show where I just pretty much explain experiences that I've had throughout my life in an unrelenting, unfiltered, and unapologetic way. So we bring you absolutely something for everyone. So make sure you check out those different episodes and share them around. It means a lot to us. So thank you so much. If you missed our past episodes, we've had some great guests on this season. From Baba Yogi Kalanatha Gori to John Vermillion and Orly Stewart, Natasha Michelle, Baal Kadmon. We had just so many different people on the show. So we're really, really thankful to be back for our 5th season and, bringing you what we love to bring you, which is topics of occultism and deep diving discussions. So if you have any questions tonight, make sure you ask us and we'll throw them up on the screen. We'll read them off and we'll go ahead and get started with tonight's episode. All right, so tonight we are graced by a guest whose name resonates through the halls of modern diabolism. Magus Aleister Nacht, Magus of the Magnum Opus Satanic Coven. Prepare to dive and delve into the mysteries of the left-hand path as we explore with Aleister the depths of satanic philosophy, ritual practice, and the forging of the will in the diabolical arts. Ladies and gentlemen, for the 3rd time on Knights of the Nephilim, we are graced by someone I am absolutely always honored to speak with, and that is Magus Aleister Nacht. Welcome, brother.
Thank you. You're too gracious.
Oh, not at all, man. You've always been one of my favorite guests to bring on, someone I absolutely love just sitting down and deep diving into concepts and conversations with. So thank you so much for making time this evening to come back on and to talk with all of us.
I'm happy to be here.
Absolutely. So 3rd time, Aleister. This is, and what's really interesting about it is not only is this 3 times, and it's been across several years because there was a break there for like a year and a half of the show, but all 3 episodes have been in October. I don't know how that's worked out that way. It just kind of has, but all 3 episodes have been October episodes. So we're keeping up with tradition, which is cool. And we're ready to deep dive in. So can you tell us about the foundational principles that define the Magnum Opus Satanic Coven?
Well, Magnum Opus itself, we created Magnum Opus, our physical coven, created it with very basic principles that Satan, we call him Satanas, he's known by many names, but he is a real entity. He is a real energy force. And quite simply, the best way to sum it up, I often say we're devil worshippers. We're not really worshippers. We're big admirers of the devil. And Satanas is our, I would say, our primary spirit. And we deal with a lot of different spirits and entities at all levels of the hierarchy of what you may call demons. We prefer the word spirits. And we interact with them through our ritual, through meditation. And that's pretty much a summary of it. It started very simple. It has remained very simple. All of these years, and it's been, well, about 35 years now. It's been the same philosophy, the same practice. We grow, and we have grown a lot as new developments would come to pass. We're constantly discovering new spirit entities. We recently discovered one called carpronaline. That is the recent. And while his name is really not important for humans, we have to label him as something. And that kind of came to me as a dream of the name itself. And I actually asked several people in our coven what they made of it and what their thoughts were. And I had several different takes on the word itself, interpretations. I'm not really sure what the word means other than the way to identify this one entity. And he has done a lot of really great things with Magnum Opus over the last year, that we had kind of reached a spot in our practice where we wanted something rejuvenating. And he certainly filled that prescription. Not that the other entities, Satanas himself, are not exciting, and they don't constantly surprise. But there comes a time when I think through any practice, sometimes we get to the point where we feel dogma is creeping in. And we were starting to kind of reach that in our practice. And so this new entity has really blessed us a lot. And for me, it's been quite an exciting journey the last year as far as the creative side. I think last time that we spoke, couple of years ago or a year ago or so, at that point I never really thought that I would write another book. I did not think I had anything new to say, and I didn't want to put a book out there just to put it out there. I wanted to have something to say that would be relevant and that would resonate. And so that's how that book came to be, just through his inspiration. So it's a very simple practice. It's not buried in mysticism or anything like that. Everything is very straightforward. And that's the way we like it.
No, I love that. I mean, we often think that things have to be very complicated, and we oftentimes make things more complicated than they really need to be. I think that's just, we feel like for big rewards, you have to take big journeys, and that's not always the case. Yes, a lot of times that will bring that experience, but if you're always looking for the sights far, far away, you're missing all of the amazing sights close by. And so many people ignore that, and sometimes it's not as hard as you want to make it. So no, that's beautiful. How's the new book being received right now?
So far, so good. Um, a lot of really good feedback, and I think a lot of surprise, because for the last 2 years or so, maybe even longer, as I said, I never really thought that I would write another book. And I was very vocal about that.
No, I was very
And
excited to see you come back, to be honest with you, brother. I mean, I know that, like you said, 2 years ago, I think when we had you, and it was October 2 years ago, I believe, you were like that. I finished my writing career, and I think that I am going to kind of take a step back and remain among the shadows. And that, while I respected the decision, it was a heartbreaking decision. I'm like, oh wow, hey, whatever you feel you need to do. So when you came back out and started making your podcast again, when you started making videos again and teachings again, announced that you were releasing a book, it was like, all right, the man is back. So it was a beautiful thing.
yeah, it was. I very much go with my heart, and in a lot of ways, I wear my heart on my sleeve, so to speak. I'm not a real deep person as far as people go, but one thing that I am is I try to be true to myself and genuine to those around me. And I just did not feel that I had anything to say. And then in January, I started kind of getting the itch to do something different. I've been doing videos. Um, I've been doing my blog on Patreon, and I just wanted to do something different. So something just kind of told me, just start writing. Just put some thoughts together. Don't write a book. Just start putting some things together and see what happens. And so that's what I did. And I spend a lot of time traveling. And so it was very easy just to, I've got downtime in a hotel, just start writing. I wrote one chapter in the back of a Uber going to the airport in Houston. I was stuck in traffic, and it's like I just opened my laptop and just wrote the entire chapter right there. I felt it coming, and I wanted to capture it. And I had also, I started doing a lot of audio memos. And so I would wake up in the middle of the night, and I would really feel this. It wasn't a deja vu, but it was a true speaking of the spirit to me. And I would just have this idea given to me. And so I would roll over, feel around, find my phone, hit record, say a few lines, put the phone back down, go back to sleep. And I'm glad I did, because a lot of the material in the book, a lot of the ideas for the way to lay things out actually came from that. So I would listen to it the next morning. And of course, if I would have said, yeah, I'll remember that until tomorrow, never would have happened. I do not usually remember what happened during the night. So I'm glad I did that. And so I just began collecting those, along with writing here and there, not every day, but every week I would write a page or so, just when I felt Satanas and I felt the spirit, and more especially corpronally, just kept giving information and things that I needed to capture. I felt like I needed to put it down on paper. And so that's what I did. And the one thing that I challenged myself with is I did not want to have another book that was just 100% theory. I wanted to have a book that someone could use. That to me is the value of any book. You know, it's great to have theory. It's great to do research and deliver things that people may not have thought about. But to me, when I read a book, I look for the takeaway. How does this apply to my life?
Yep.
And how can I use this? Just having the knowledge just for the sake of knowledge is, to me, it doesn't fulfill what I need from a book. And so that was the way that I approached it. If I wrote on a certain topic, I would explain the topic. I would explain what our thoughts as Magnum Opus are. I would share some of my personal experiences, and that's something else that I had not done in books before. I had not really shared anything about me and my practice all the way from the years of addiction back in the 80s, all the way until today. So I started putting those things together and writing it from that aspect. And it's been very well received. People seem to like it. They, the reviews are kind of slow. I get a lot more email traffic than I do actual reviews, and that's just the nature of my work. It takes a long time for people to finally put reviews, good and bad. But so far, so good. And one person actually told me that it's the best book I've ever written because they could tell how much I had grown from my last book, Satanism and Devil Worship. And that made me feel good. I mean, that's all you want to do as a writer is get better. And if people find value, and more especially if they say, well, wow, this is a lot better than your last one. Your last one was good, but this one is a lot better. Made my day.
No, that's awesome to hear. Satanism and Devil Worship was an awesome book. So if it's that much better, that is saying something about the growth. I have not had the chance to read it yet. My book list is so ridiculous at this point that I can't humanly get through it, but I'm trying the best that I can. I am a constant reader, but I can't wait to be able to get a copy of it and read through it. I've always enjoyed your work. And you said a few things that I think are very important to the listeners out there, that in the night, we often do wake up. If we're doing a lot of ritual, spirits come to us in dreams. It's one of the easiest ways for spirits to communicate to us. It's easier for them to do that than to usually show up in the ritual chamber. Now, the problem with it is as you said, you wake up in the middle of the night and you're like, I don't really want to get up. I'm really comfortable right now. I will write that down in the morning. You wake up in the morning and you're like, oh shit, I can't remember a thing that it said to me. So What I would suggest to the listeners out there is one of two things. Either truly forcing yourself to get up and write it down in a dream journal. And that's in a perfect world, right? You know, that's what everybody always says. And I've even taught people that before, take a dream journal. You got to have a dream journal. And that is great. But most of us aren't getting up, flicking on the light, grabbing a pen or pencil, writing it down, and then trying to go back to sleep. But as you said, what I've also found a lot of success with is voice memos. Just grabbing your voice memo app on your phone, saying what you have to say real quick, turning it off and going right back to sleep. Because guys, you can do that in 15, 20 seconds and then be right back out. But if you're turning on a lamp, you're drawing it or writing it down in a book, then you have to put the book down. You're going to have a harder time falling asleep, and it's not going to be enjoyable for you. But those voice memos can happen quickly. Now, I will tell you, as someone who has hundreds upon hundreds of voice memos, sometimes you have no idea what the hell you're talking about in them, but that's okay. That's something nice to reflect back on, because I've listened to some of them and I'm like, what am I rambling on about? Is it spiritual contact and I'm saying what they told me and I was just so into it that that's exactly what they told me? Or am I talking gibberish right now? I don't know, but it all has its place. And as you go back through them, you do get sparked with ideas. Sometimes you don't even realize at first, and as you listen to them, it ends up leading into something down the road a few days later, a few weeks later, that if you would not have captured, you would not know. And I mean, I've come up with full spiritual ends and mantras in dream where after listening back to them, I'm like, oh, wow, that's got power to it, and started using it in ritual and had tremendous results. And I'm like, oh, wow, if I wouldn't have recorded that, that would have been lost to the world forever. And I think that's very important to have that space to record it.
The grimoire itself is like that for me, and has been my entire journey. So I encourage people to write everything down after a working or an experience or even meditation. And what I found is I would write something down and not even understand it in my journal.
Mm-hmm.
And then 3 months, 6 months down the road, that would come together with something else. And I would be like, that's why. Because gnosis doesn't come all at once. Sometimes it comes piecemeal. And that's because time is different in our world. It's linear. And so one piece of information you receive today may benefit you in 3 months, and it may be the key that unlocks everything else. But if you don't capture that, it may be very minute as well. It's sometimes it's not earth-shaking gnosis. We're not going to split the atom here. But many times those small tidbits that you write down, they all fit together, and they will show something. Sometimes it's very qualitative what it shows, but it does that over time.
And as you said, a lot of times it's not going to be earth-shaking. It is going to be small little pieces, little breadcrumbs at a time. But if you gather up enough breadcrumbs, you have the bakery. And I think that that's important. And a lot of times we want to overlook that because we want the big bang, right? Everybody's always like looking for the big boom. Folks, it doesn't happen like that often. You'll have those big boom moments, but you won't have those big boom moments if you don't have those little snaps. I think that is important to understand, that if you're ignoring all the little hints and little things that they're giving you, expecting that big moment, they're not going to give it to you, because they're going to realize you don't care about the actual process of growth in following your path. It's like with the ghost hunting thing, and you and I have talked about this before. You're not a paranormal investigator, a paranormal researcher. If you're only going out to get the spook scare and a jump scare and capture them on photo, then you're a ghost hunter, and the spirits don't interact with you that much. But when you're there with sincerity and you're actually following the path, and you're sitting there for 20, 30 hours of nothing for that big moment to happen, then it happens because you're steadying the course. And I think that that's very, very important for all of us to do in our practice. And one thing I really like you said about the new book is the fact of giving personal experiences. You have to have the right time to do it too, because if you are a brand new author and no one knows who you are, and you drop personal experiences, probably is not going to have a huge impact on anybody, because no one knows who you are. No one really cares that much because you're a nobody. But when you've been around like yourself and have released multiple books, you are a very well-known figure in diabolism and Satanism. You haven't really released a lot of your own personal experience, and you have quite a following. Years later, you then release that little doorway into yourself, then it really speaks to your crowd. And they say, oh, wow, Magus Nacht is telling us about his journey, and I'm finding things in my life that reflect what he's saying happened in his. Oh, and it really pulls them in, because people look for what they can relate to. And once you give them that and you have enough people there that relate to that, it really builds such a loyal following.
Absolutely.
Now, I did want to ask a question. We talked about this in past episodes, but for folks that might be listening right now that, weren't there for the original first or second episode, I just want to touch quickly on it. How did your journey into Satanism begin, and how did your journey into Satanism begin, and was there a moment of just epiphany that changed you and said, this is my path for the rest of my life?
Yeah, so in the 80s, and I'm quite old. I'm not a boomer, as some people say, but I'm pretty close to it. In the 80s, I was a teenager and I left home. I was in a very abusive home My father left when I was very young. I don't remember him at all. My mother went overboard in religion, and she believed every word of the Bible, and she tried to enforce every word of it. So I took a lot of physical abuse along with verbal. Verbal didn't bother me, but the physical, I mean, when you get hit in the face with a big glass ashtray and it breaks your nose, that not only hurts your feelings, but it hurts everything else. So I left. I absolutely felt that I could not stay a moment later. And so I left one night. I was in northern Louisiana. That's where I grew up at. And I hitchhiked down to New Orleans. And I had no idea what I was going there for. I didn't know anyone there. All I knew is that I was just running for my life, so to speak. And so I was able to hitch a ride with a truck driver, super nice guy. You know, he tried several times to say, "Hey, look, you know, I can stop and call somebody. They can come pick you up. You know, it's rough out there." Of course, I knew everything, so I was like, "No, man, I'm good. I appreciate it. Thank you, but no, I'm on my own." So I ended up in New Orleans, and it was a huge learning curve. It was straight up. I got robbed at knife point.
Shit.
Down in the French Quarter. You know, I was very naive, and I got to the point where I was dating a girl or seeing a girl. I didn't know what she was at the time, but she was an addict. And so we had been out, we had been partying. I had never tried anything except marijuana, you know, do a little puff or something like that. But she brought me back to her place, and she was the one that did it the first time. And man, I fell in love. It was the best thing that I had ever felt in my life. I can't even put into words what it was. But I was hooked from the first time. I mean, I guess I could have walked away, but with my personality, it would not have worked. So I became an addict, and everything I did was about getting the next fix. And I did some pretty bad things living on the street that I'm not proud of. But when you're out there, no one should judge you because they've never been through it before. Living on the street, especially in that condition, is, well, if you've never done it before, I really don't care about your opinion. It's something that you have to go through. You have to experience to even be able to relate to that. And so I went full circle. I went through the whole thing. I was using daily. And I remember I woke up in the French Quarter, and I went to Café du Monde, which is a little restaurant there across from Jackson Square. And I was just going to get a cup of coffee. I just wanted some coffee. I just woke up. I had long hair, and it was all matted up, and I just looked terrible. And so I was sitting at this table, and this lady came up and sat down at the table next to me. And she looked at me and she said something to the effect of, "You're looking for a place to die." And I was kind of taken aback. I was like, "Who are you? Are you one of these Christians or something?" Because, they're always, trying to catch you in the square and, tell you about Jesus and all of that. And I was like, why do you say that? And she said, I can tell. You got a bad spirit on you. And I said, yeah, I am. I'm looking for a place to die. I actually had what I needed in my pocket. And my plan was I was going to do a hot shot and that would be the end of it. And, it was, to me, it was one of those things. I was a strong person and I thought I would never, ever reach that point in my life. But drugs will do that to you. Heroin will do that to you. It will make you to the point where you just really don't care if you wake up tomorrow. The only thing worth living for is that next fix. And if you can't get that next fix, next thing from that is death. Just make it stop hurting. I mean, I had been in situations where I had gone a couple of days without getting a bump, and you start to get the withdrawals, and God, they were awful. So anyway, she told me, she said, if you want to try to save your life, if you think you're worth saving, here's my address. And she wrote it down for me and she gave it to me. And she said, come see me and I'll help you through. But you're going to have to leave the heroin behind. Can't have that. So anyway, I went another day or so. I thought about it. I kept going back to that note and I thought, well, what have I got to lose? And so I actually went to her house and she invited me in. She was nice to me. She was a African American woman, and I'm part African American on my dad's side, and so for me that was two connections. Number one, it was a mother that was not judgmental. She felt what I was going through. And number two, she was part of my people, which I never knew. I grew up as white. I mean, look at me. And so she said, well, look, you need to get some help. You need to get through with the drugs. And when you do, I have something that I want to share with you. And it's called hoodoo. And I had no idea what hoodoo was, voodoo, any of that. I had no idea what the left-hand path was. None. And so I said, okay, all right, it's a deal. So I did have a friend that I had met before I started using. His name was Shark. And I went by to see him and I said, look, man, I want to get off of this. And he said, all right, well, we can do it. And so I just detoxed right there, and it was ugly. It was ugly. I've written about that on my blog. But he got me through it. And he went through hell doing it because it was very rough. The detox was rough. My mental state was rough. It was the nastiest experience I've ever gone through. Not to be graphic, but that's the reality of it. Once I got through about a week, then all of the symptoms of being sick went away, but they were replaced with these unbelievable muscle spasms and restless leg that I had never experienced, have never experienced it since. It makes you want to cut your legs off. You can't sleep. You can't be still. Every time you try to be still, you jump and you kick, and your muscles convulse and they tighten up. And it was another probably week of that. And you don't get any sleep. I mean, I had gone through the first week, which is just total mess. Then the second week with that, so I'm going on, like maybe an hour's sleep every 24 hours or so. I'm just so dragged down. And I finally was able to eat, and from there I started getting better. And he had he had a lot of he had pity on me, I guess it's the best way to say it. Truly great person, non-judgmental, wasn't a Christian or any of that kind of stuff. He helped me because he wanted to, and he didn't want anything in return. And unfortunately, he was killed in a car crash a few years later after that. And the guy that crossed the line and killed him had heroin in his blood stream.
Oh,
so yeah, so kind of come full circle. But anyway, I started getting better physically. It takes a while to get better mentally, because when you're using chemicals like that, at least in my experience, even after the being sick, the withdrawal, the muscle spasms, all of the physical things, now I had this mental peak and valley where I would be so happy to be alive, and then I would smell something or see something and just take a nosedive into pure desperation, just start crying. I mean, it takes so long because that stuff, it fucks with your system so much. It just takes a while. It takes a while to get through all of that. When I did, I went back to see her, and she started teaching me about hoodoo. And this was passed down through her family, and she was in, they don't call them covens, they're just a group. And she would do readings, she would do, different things in the neighborhood. She was kind of like, you might call her the witch doctor, so to speak, of her neighborhood. When someone was sick, she had herbs and medicinal things that she could make. She had tinctures and things like that. I learned a lot about herbs and how to use those for different things. And, she would be able to work what they call working roots. It's kind of like spell casting, also removing spells from people. So if someone felt that they had something worked on them, they would come to her and she would be able to remove that. So I got very interested, and I listened to everything she said. I worked hard. I tried my hardest, and I learned. I actually got to the point where I feel like I was kind of proficient, not super proficient. But at that point in time, I was moving from Louisiana down here to Florida, where I live now. And so when I left Louisiana, I brought the hoodoo with me, and I continued the practice here in Florida just on my own. And I was lucky enough to kind of cultivate something more, and I wanted something more. I was looking for more. Hoodoo did not fill the hole inside. And so I remember when I lived in New Orleans, I went to an old bookstore, and in the very back was a Satanic Bible. And I got it. I read through it. I didn't understand anything about it. I didn't know at that time that, who Anton LaVey was or anything like that. I was just thinking, some of this stuff makes sense. Some of it's, to me, was just common sense. If someone hurts you, you hurt them. But I put all of that away in those years in New Orleans until I left. And when I moved down to Florida, I was going through some boxes like 2 years after I got here, and I found that Satanic Bible, and I started reading it. I read through it again. I got a couple of other books of Anton LaVey's, and I was trying to understand what he was doing and what he was saying in there. Really trying to put it all together to use it as something spiritual for myself as a soul practitioner. And that led to me meeting a couple of people here that they call themselves devil worshippers right off the bat out here in the swamp. And so we started our own group. We started working together. We piecemealed things. I brought some hoodoo to it. They had some other practices that they brought over the years to it. And we formulated what would be Magnum Opus and our take on theistic Satanism. So that's the long story of how it kind of happened.
No, I think it's a very powerful story because, as you said, as someone who overcame, being abandoned or neglected, being abused, going through homelessness, going through addiction, that's a lot to overcome. And it's either going to drag you down and destroy you, or it's going to give you the launching pad to become something much, much greater from those hardships. And I think, and I said some of our listeners are going to be like, what are you talking about, Crow? I think that woman almost was like an angel for you, not in the sense of Christianity or anything like that, but almost a spirit that popped up and said, you know what, I'm going to give you this slip of paper with my address, and this is your lifeline. And if you take it, you're going to live and you're going to thrive. If you decide to throw it to the wayside and abandon it, you're going to find that death that you were seeking. And I think that's amazing, to be honest with you, because as you said, coming from a different culture, coming from a different faith base, something you didn't even know much about, she could spot it on you and you were ready to die, and she knew it, and she threw that lifeline. And I love that. I mean, obviously, look what it has started. Look how many books you have written. Look at your journey and the experiences that you had that would have never been had. Every person you've come into contact with, whether large or small, you've influenced in some way. We all do. Everybody we meet, it changes the trajectory of our lives and their lives. Think of all those little moments that wouldn't have been had if she wouldn't have come over and sat next to you. And I think that is such a powerful thing, and very, very beautiful, to be honest with you. So I'm glad she sat next to you.
Yeah, it's the little things that happen, and they happen for a reason. I don't believe in destiny. I don't think anyone is predestined for anything. But I think there is always a possibility, and through your decisions, you make the life in the world that you want.
Yep.
And the main thing is not to stop, to keep going, because it's not all going to happen. It's not all going to be easy. It wasn't for me. It's still not. But if it's worth having, it's worth working for. And if you do a little bit every day over a week, 2 weeks, a year, a decade, your work is going to pay off. And especially if you're doing it for the right reason.
Yep.
So everything that I do is for the glory, and the recognition goes to Satanas. I am very I'm very straightforward about that. Money, fame, all of these different things, they never have appealed to me. Yeah, you have to have money, you have to make a living. Yeah, we all do that. But that's not where fulfillment comes from. For me, fulfillment comes from me doing something for Satanas. And then he takes that and he does with it something that I cannot do. Because it's not me. It's him. It's the hosts of hell that do this. And that's why I always had a problem with the atheistic point of view. Even some Luciferians that are atheists, I'm not going to knock it. A person's belief is a person's belief. But I can't make those two, I can't balance that balance sheet between calling on Satan and not even believing that he's there, believing that you are the ultimate power and strength in the universe. To me, that's a little bit egotistical.
It is.
As many things as we don't know, and we don't know a whole lot more than what we do know. And we're, as a species, we're very prideful. We know everything. We know. No, you don't. No, I don't. You never will in this world. We're limited by our 3 dimensions, and you'll never know. So for you to say something as emphatic as, well, there is no God, there is no devil, I am a God. Well, maybe in your world, not in mine. So,
I think it comes to that honorific balance. You honor the spirits you work with, you pay homage to them and honor them and raise them up. In return, that dedication and love and honor that you give to those spirits, they then honor you by moving you as a chess piece throughout life to put you in the right situations at the right time. Doesn't mean they're going to make every decision for you, but they're going to put you within a position that you can make the decisions to lead to the next avenue of your life. And
absolutely.
you could still fuck up and make the wrong choice, absolutely, and that's because you have free will. They're not going to decide everything for you. But where you would have never even been at that crossroads to have A and B as an option, now they're putting you there. And if you succeed, Spirit doesn't want necessarily recognition. They're saying you made that victory, you made that defeat. But in the end, no matter what, whether you've suffered that defeat or victory, you still then pay homage to your spirit. Thank you for putting me in the crossroads. And as you honor, they honor. And I think it is an even exchange. And you kind of answered one of the questions I was going to ask next, which was, how does theistic Satanism's principles overlap or conflict with other left-handed path traditions, such as atheistic Satanism or certain brands of Luciferianism? So you literally answered that to a T. It was the exact question. So I love it. So we'll get rid of that one.
And don't get me wrong, I'm not knocking those, okay? It's not for me. Ultimately, what you decide, your path, has to fit for you. And if you catch yourself having to hammer something into place to believe it, it's not your path. Just let go of it.
Well, it's weird to me to use, and my thing is like, you're using something to reach inner illumination that you wouldn't have to use that thing. And what I mean by that is, if you're saying, okay, well, we're going to worship Satan not as a deity, but as our own divine self and our inner black flame, and there is no spirits don't exist, then why even use Satan? Why don't just say, I am,
Yeah.
I have it within myself to grow. I don't need to even use iconography of this dark
Yeah.
lord. I just am, I am that I am. So
Just worship a tree or something. I mean, you don't have to call on Satan just to be dark and spooky, I guess. But yeah, and by the same token, if Satan does not exist, if the hosts of hell do not exist, which I know they do, then magic is bullshit, because they're the ones that cause that to happen. It is their carrying whatever it is that you've asked for and fulfilling it. That's something humans can't do. I mean, if you want to impress someone, show them your ability. Make something on a table move across the room. Humans don't do that, not very often. So to say there's nothing out there, or more especially, on our path, we get a lot of flack from the atheistic Satanists. They always have some kind of comment about, what have you. And my question is, well, you believe in something, you just believe in nothing. And you believe in nothing more than most people believe in an entity. So why are you wasting your time? I mean,
yeah.
it's a catch-22.
What are you bettering yourself for if there's nothing to better yourself for? It's strange. So it's like
Yeah,
I become a master of myself within the flesh, but then you die and there's nothing. There's no afterlife. There's no spirits that you work with, that you're accepted into the fold. You just simply live the best life you can while on earth, which is admirable in its own way. But that's not the point, because within theistic Satanism, you can better yourself, master your life, honor your spirits, and reach a high level of mystical frequency that, it's depending upon your belief system. Once you die, you continue to work in that fold, whether that is being absorbed back into Ein and you're nothing, whether that is becoming self deified and becoming a spirit that comes back here and helps other Satanists, like a satanic bodhisattva. No matter what that might be, there's a lot of different paths within the system of belief. And just because there's belief, folks, doesn't mean there has to be religion or dogma. There's separate categories there. You can have belief and find unfoldment without shackling yourself to dogma. But the problem is a lot of times, like you said, atheistic Satanism will kind of spit in the face of that and be like, oh, we don't get into dogma and religion. Well, you kind of are, because your dogma and religion is the dogma and religion of self, and your religion is you. So everybody follows a faith. You can't sit there and spit in the face of faith and say, I don't have faith in things. Faith, is for the naive. But then your faith is in that you are a god of this world. You just fucking contradicted yourself and literally said, I have faith in me, but I don't have faith in anything else. It's okay to have faith in yourself, but we need to be more open to things, because the more open you are, the more things you will receive. When you're closed off, you're exactly that. You're closed off.
yeah, absolutely. And there are a lot of people out there that are shysters anyway.
Yeah.
And
Shit.
they use this. If it wasn't this, it would be something else, to create a following and manipulate those people. I hear about it quite frequently. People contact me and tell me about certain things that have happened, and it's a cult. And the only way that a cult like that can survive is through manipulation and control. And you can see all of the factors at play when you start hearing what their experience is, and how the quote guru acts, and the way that they conduct themselves, and the way that there's never really a trust. There's always the fear that someone is going to tattle on you to the guru. And it's once again groupthink. And it's something that builds this cage that a person ends up in. And it's unfortunate.
It
A
becomes
lot of
hive
people go
mind.
through that.
It's that hive
Yeah.
mind that everybody has to be the same way. And the thing is, I always said, if you were to ever, anyone out there listening, and I've talked about this on my show extensively, you ever join a coven, a cult, whatever you want to call it, an organization, and you are never allowed to question the leader, and it doesn't mean you have to be a prick about it, but you're not allowed to literally ask questions to question their authority, there's something wrong. Because anytime
Leave.
you say, excuse me, Aleister, I have questions on this lesson you just gave. I don't mean to be disrespectful, but there's a few things that just aren't sitting well with me, and
Mhm.
I have a different point of view. I would like to express my point of view to you and see, what your thoughts are on what I think. If that individual were to say, no, it is what I taught. I taught you the right way. There is no other way. Then that's the point where you need to pull the ejector cord because something's wrong.
That's right.
And we talked about this in some of my other organizations that I'm involved in, that there are other cults within certain religions, and some of the ATR religions that I'm involved in. I'm a Kimbandero of Kimbanda. There are Kimbanda houses out there that if you were to ask your Tatar Yaya, I want to speak to your Tatar Yaya. I just want to get to meet them. I'm so honored to be in this, but I want to see our grandfather and our great spiritual grandfather, and they're still alive, and I would love to just talk to them sometime. You're not allowed to. What do you mean? I can't ever. No, you're not allowed. No one speaks to them but me. And it starts to be like I am the gatekeeper and closing you off. You're not allowed to ask anyone questions outside of me. So you get that mix of you can't ask me questions, or you can only ask me questions, no one else. And it starts to be like, okay, man, you really are taking on what most of the outside world recognizes as cult behavior. I'm 100%
They-
a cult leader, but my cult knows that they can question me at any given time. The outside world can question me. I love to have debates. I love to have talks. I love to shoot ideas back and forth until we come to the symbiotic understanding of, okay, maybe you just threw some things out that changed my perspective, and vice versa. That's how
Yep.
growth happens.
That's right. That's exactly right. And if you're not willing to have that conversation, or you want to shut someone down, then that should be the first indicator that you're in the wrong place. You need to get out of there, because no one is beyond questioning. Now, there's a respectful way to do it, but it's also the way that everyone learns,
Yeah.
by asking those questions. And if you're seeking a deeper understanding, you're just going to have to ask those questions in order to get it. I mean, we only know what we hear and what we experience. We don't, there's no osmosis. So you're either going to get it one way or the other. And if you don't ask the questions, then obviously you won't have that deeper understanding.
And I think you protect yourself and your brothers and sisters within your lineage by being the one ballsy enough to ask questions, because too
Mhm.
often people tuck their tails. I want us to think about in history, and a lot of our listeners out there were around during this. Think of David Koresh and the New Branch Davidians. Think about the fact that this man literally started a cult of Christians who got together, and he would tell them, I am of the bloodline of David. I am the true prophet of the new age. And because I am the one true prophet, I get to fuck every one of your wives. You
Mhm.
no longer can. You're not allowed to anymore because
Yeah.
the Bible doesn't want us having inappropriate sex. Only I am, because I am the
Yeah.
bloodline of David, and he wants me. The Lord Jesus wants me to sleep with your wives and have children with your wife. And these dudes were standing aside and they're like, sure, bang my wife because you are the prophet. And no one checked it. And then sadly, obviously, they formed a military like cult and had to stand off with police. And it ended in a massive tragedy, a lot of lives lost,
Hmm.
all because no one kind of called together the rest of the group when David Koresh wasn't around and says, listen, something's not fucking right here, man. I'm
But
not jiving with what this man said. No, they all just tucked their tails and says, yes, yes, David, 100% you are the bloodline of David. That's sad because there's so much hive
Mhm.
mind that everybody just goes with what they're told. They all have one mind. And that'll never be me. I'll always be respectful. In fact, I'll throw this comment up right here. Yaya Donna de Morche said, speak on it, brother. That is my Yaya within Kimbanda, a wonderful teacher that has taught me, I was already that type of person, but she told me from day one, you always speak your mind. If you have something to say it. If you have a question you want to ask me, question me. Don't ever hold your tongue. I would never obviously be disrespectful to her in my life, but I know that I have that comfortability and that security to be able to say, hey, something's not sitting right, or I think a little bit differently here. Can we talk it out? And we do.
Yeah.
That is a leader.
Well,
too often that's not the case anymore.
Yeah, we're seeing one of the biggest tragedies in history right now because of that groupthink.
Yes.
The Bible is being an authority, and cannot be questioned. We're experiencing such horrors in the world because of that. And this is, I want to make this point because I don't think people understand when I say that we follow Satanas. You have to understand who he is. And in order to do that, you have to break what you have been indoctrinated to believe. First of all, with good and evil. There's no such thing as good and evil. There is a perception of good, and there's a perception of evil. Just like there's no such thing as white magic and black magic in our practice. Magic is magic. Your intent is what some people might say causes black magic versus white magic. We don't differentiate between the two. So understanding what good and evil truly are. Our definition of good is anything that makes you a better person, a better fit within your tribe, within your group. That is good. Bad or evil is anything that would limit you from doing that. So anytime that a law is created that restricts your rights to do something that would make you a better person, we see that as evil. Now that's simplistic, but it's always gray, and it is never black and white. When people look at Satan, they have been indoctrinated through the Bible. The Bible was written a long time ago by Jewish and Gentile in the New Testament that wanted to sell ideas, and they wanted an authoritative document to be able to point back to say, see, we didn't say it, God said it. This big dude in the sky that knows everything and watches everyone, he's on our side. We're the chosen ones.
Yep.
Now, accepting that has got our world so fucked up right now. We see it everywhere. And that's what it is. It's those that are not questioning. And it's not only the tribe that doesn't question, but Zionism in itself, and I don't want to get you banned or anything like that. I'll limit what I'm going to say here.
I've been there and done that and gotten banned a few times.
I have too. And you know what? It's truth. And it is what it is. In the end, it comes out no matter what, because truth is one thing that is constant in the world, and it always comes out in the end. No matter how much you try to bury it, it does. It's not a good or a bad thing. It's just the way that our universe is put together. But we have so many on the right-hand path that believe these things unequivocally and support other countries unflinchingly and unequivocally, that we're now seeing the real result of that. This is a huge experiment for the whole world to look at and see what can happen. If you ever wondered how World War II happened, how the atrocities happened during World War II, look no further than what you're seeing right now and what's
100%.
happening right now.
And it happens. I don't want to say small movements because things happening are small right now, but in the grand scheme, they are small. So a little while back, I said you were going to start seeing where there will be attack on specific subgroups. So we've seen anything that's and anybody that's an immigrant. Well, even if they're American, they were born here or they've been here long enough to have their green card and are legally here. Well, then they're the enemy now. They're still an immigrant. Okay, well, let's shelter them aside. Now, gays, lesbians, bisexuals, and transgenders. Well, if they're not liked, we don't like them. Let's get rid of them. Well, the poor, poor are kind of a nuisance. We don't like the poor, so let's get rid of them. Oh, well, all these homeless people, which are poor, a lot of times poor, but poor and mentally insane. So now we got poor, mentally insane, homeless, gays and queers, immigrants, anybody of color. And then I said this quite a while ago. I says, and then after through all those, I says, they won't do it at first. They'll go for those first. I says, then they're going to start coming for anybody that's not of a certain religion. Now, the reason that this is important, folks, what just happened recently, and I have to be very careful with this conversation, but there was someone who was recently killed. And I don't wish death upon anybody. But the way that things are able to be spun from events happening are able to really push motivations. And why I say this is that, yes, there was some type of witch out there, some type of person that hired a witch from Etsy to put a curse on this man. And Jezebel website and all that put an article out about the fact that this woman hired someone to put a curse on him and did it a second time. And then within like a week of the second time, he lost his life. Obviously, could that have affected it? Possibly, but most likely not. And there was a far right, I don't know, some type of broadcaster. I don't know who she was, to be honest with you, but I watched the video. And she called a call to action saying that the fact that Etsy would even allow witches and pagans on their website offering services is a blasphemy. Well, then there was hundreds of thousands of comments of people saying, I just deleted my Etsy account. I'll no longer support them. Well, there was other people leaving comments saying, so wait a second, you're going to fuck a million artsy people who have nothing to do with witchcraft and paganism just because you don't like the fact that there's some on there that are. And people are like, absolutely. So that's sad in itself. We've come to that culture, that cancel culture, as we talked about. But where this is crazy, folks, in these comments I seen, which should be alarming to every one of you listening right now, because if you're listening, obviously you have an interest in occultism, Satanism, left-hand path, paganism, and so forth. In the comments, they said maybe it's about time we start rounding them up again. Maybe it's time we light the fires again. Maybe it's time we hang the ropes again. And this wasn't one person, guys. This was thousands of comments of groupthink, just like we were talking cult groupthink. That's what this was. And you had people literally saying, maybe it's time to hunt down the pagans and hang and burn them again. All because some girl hired someone from Etsy to put a curse on someone that probably didn't do a fucking thing. That this guy did his own thing that maybe pissed somebody else off that took him out. I can't speak on that. But because of that, they're able to use that to link it to some other silly thing to actually spark a fucking fire, no pun intended, to launch this crusade, this modern day witch hunt again. And it takes care of every check mark they needed, every unfavorable.
Yeah, it can happen so quickly. And people are so angry.
So angry.
I grew up in a different time. I'm not going to say it was a better time. No way. But people still talked. And I can remember when I was in school, junior high school especially, you're getting a tough with somebody, and you just duke it out. You get out in the field and you just beat the shit out of each other, and then maybe you go get a beer together. It took care of all that pinned up hatred, anxiety, anger, and it got it out. It exercised it, and then you were able to think clearly again. But we don't have that today, we don't have that mechanism to be able to decompress. And people go on social media and they see these things, and the algorithm, all it does is feed you what you want to see. The minute you like something, you're going to get more of that shit. And you're just going to be bombarded with that stuff. And people build up that pressure over time, and there's no release. And then when someone comes along with some idea that resonates, we victimize, we say, well, they're the ones that are responsible.
Aleister, you're starting to cut out a little bit. And guys, I want you to pay attention to that we've had a crystal clear broadcast this entire time. Don't find it by any means ironic that we're starting to talk about this and now the feed's starting to cut in and out and blur and you can't hear each other. That's a real thing. That's happened before when we've talked over controversial things. All of a sudden the feed starts cutting in and out. How the hell does that happen, huh? How do we sit for an hour and 15 minutes crystal clear, and the second we bring up something we shouldn't, broadcast starts getting up? Look at Aleister's camera right now, how it's throwing him back and forth and freezing and lagging. That's not by mistake, guys. I want you to take heavy note of that. That should be very alarming to every single one of you. Aleister, I was going to say, I think I probably lost him. He's going to have to maybe jump out and then jump back in. But that's real talk, guys. We are looking at, no matter what side you are on politically. I don't care if you're Republican, if you're Democrat, if you're liberal, if you're whatever. It doesn't matter to me. Conservative. Just because you're one side or another doesn't mean you have to believe. You could be Republican and not agree with the things that are going on in the world right now. That doesn't make you a shitty Republican. That makes you one that's probably paying attention to what's actually happening out there. And Aleister's back, so hopefully we can see him and hear him this time. But that's something people need to understand, is that we're witnessing little pieces being moved at a time. And all it takes is a lot of little pieces to make big things.
AI is absolutely, if you think that these little things happen for no reason, or it's just a glitch, just like you were saying, Crow, we've been talking now for an hour and a half, and no problem until we start talking about something like this.
Yep.
Those algorithms are eating this stuff up. Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. This shit's going to get banned, just like you said, Aleister. So with that, folks, we're going to jump to a different conversation. Right. I do want to read a comment here. Roger said, does mycelium exclusively grow in darkness? Biblically, God cursed the ground in Genesis. Laugh out loud. Probably no correlation. Notice the poster in the back. Well, yes and no, Roger. So mycelium is supposed to grow mostly in darkness. As you go into the forest, it grows under the leaf bed and into the rocks and things like that. So it's kind of already protected from the sun. It's getting hit by it, but it grows kind of out of light. Even if you were someone who grows mushrooms, so I have grown pearl mushrooms and oyster mushrooms. I have grown lion's mane and reishi and a bunch of different other kinds of mushrooms. If anybody follows my work, they know I just love mycelium and mushrooms. I think it's such a cool, fascinating thing, and I love eating them. They're delicious. But mycelium mostly grows in darkness, but you can actually have light on, and mycelium will grow, contrary to a lot of people's belief. And obviously, the light is a big part of it. You have to have light. You have to have oxygen. You don't want to have too much carbon monoxide. You'll start getting fuzzy feet. What that means is, like mushrooms, when they start to grow, the bottom stem of it gets real fuzzy white and grows off of it. That's called fuzzy feet. And it starts to grow off of mushrooms if they don't get a proper, oxygen exchange and have too much carbon monoxide. So, yes. And now, if you're talking about, Moses in Exodus, you had mentioned, let me read your comment. You said Genesis. Well, in Exodus, Moses is walking through the desert with all of his people, and they're starving, and they don't think they're going to survive. And then it says that they found manna on the desert, and they survived on the bread of the earth. Well, there's two different beliefs. That manna in the desert for Moses was actually hallucinogenic mushrooms, and they were so in contact with God in the desert during Exodus because they were tripping balls and they were talking to God. And there was a big belief in that. Now, other people were saying that manna was actually some type of slime that came from insects that I read about. It was a real trippy article I read. But once again, that this shit probably caused them to hallucinate. Now, this isn't far-fetched, guys. I want you to start looking into this. A lot of old stained glass windows, a lot of old writings and drawings and depictions and illustrations in the very old versions of the Bible and Christian iconography had mushrooms in the stained glass windows, had mushrooms in the drawings and illustrations. The reason for that is, as any culture will tell you, especially shamanistic cultures, they ate mushrooms because it does open the doorways of perception to contact higher realms of divinity. So that is something that's common amongst most religions. Now, behind you, a lot of times people mistake this guy right here that I'm pointing at. That's the fly agaric toadstool or the Amanita muscaria. That is not a magic mushroom in the sense that everybody's like, magic mushrooms. Magic mushrooms are psilocybin and psilocin. And that's your regular style mushrooms, your cow patty mushrooms that grow, golden teachers and things of that nature. Then you have these, the most notorious mushroom of all time. They're in Mario, they're in movies, they're in comic books, they're on everything you see, the red and white mushroom. Well, this doesn't have psilocybin or psilocin in it. It has muscimol and ibotonic acid in it. It's more of a deliriant than a psychoactive. But if you process it right and you eat it, it can become a form of a witch plant, often used in fly ointments and things that witches did use. And we've talked about this before, and I know a lot of my listeners out there, and I'll say it again real quickly, were surprised at this. They didn't know it. That when you talk about witches riding the broom to the Sabbath to dance with the devil and have orgies with the devil, the reason the broom was always shown with witches is because they needed an implement that they could use that was of the right spherical nature to insert inside themselves to ride to the Sabbath. They would coat the broom with fly ointments made out of datura, made out of fly agaric toadstools, made out of belladonna and other type of plant materials, plant allies. And then they would insert it into the cavity to soak into the vaginal membranes and then cause themselves to trip balls. And they would do their rituals and then float away astrally to an astral level where they were having orgies with the devil. They were having orgies with the devil without ever leaving the comfort of their own cabins. And that's a wild thing, but that is why we have that iconography of witches always with brooms. People never question it. They just think, oh, witches carry brooms and they fly on brooms. They're riding broom. Yeah, they're riding the broom.
Yeah,
That's where it
riding the
comes
broom.
from.
Yeah.
100%, guys. So if you didn't know, now you know.
You know, if you want an interesting perspective on the Bible, there is a YouTube channel. It's called Lady Babylon.
Yes.
And this dude, he's a scholar. Now, of course, he was kicked out of academia because he had these, he read the text in the original Greek. And I mean, he's got some very interesting perspectives reading it from that. Not only he was a professor of language, specializing in these languages of antiquity and Greek especially. And he not only knows the words, but more importantly, he knows how the words fit together and what they're truly trying to say, which you can't really say that about the people that interpreted the Bible into different languages. They, most of them did not have, obviously, King James version did not have that extensive knowledge. And that's why there are so many things that vary. And of course, the Schofield was the biggest, I guess, bought version to create, a certain country as being the actual chosen. But if you really want to check some stuff out, now his videos they're kind of spotty. His internet connection is not very good at times.
And he can seem a little insane at times, guys. I mean, I think he is a little out there, but a lot of times some of the most genius people are a little bit eccentric, obviously. He's a little bit eccentric. His name's Amon. Amon. He is out there, but I will tell you, and just like Aleister was saying, you have to understand that the people translating to different languages back then could have been commoners. who then someone else took theirs. And if I translate it from Hebrew into Greek, and then you're someone else who speaks Greek and you're smarter than me, then you look at my Greek version and say, well, let me fix your Greek. It doesn't mean that you're looking at the Hebrew. Then you're just fixing my Greek into other Greek. And that's how different versions start to come. And then someone comes along and says, well, I'm going to write this into Latin and make the Vulgate. And then it gets transferred again. And then someone else looks and says, well, your Latin's a little off. I'm going to tweak that Latin. So by the time you get that Latin version, the fourth one, you're like, well, it's gone through 15, 16 translations. And it's very, very different than the original Aramaic versions. And that's why I love Bulkhead Moan's teachings, because he goes back and looks at the Aramaic, the Hebrew, the Greek Septuagint. He looks at the Latin Vulgate, and he shows you the differences amongst the translations and how they changed. And that's where we talked about heavily on His and I episode and in different past episodes that, you know, for example, Lucifer was never actually an angel. Lucifer never existed. Lucifer was never a being. Lucifer was just a title, and it was actually talking about the king of Babylon. And in fact, in the Bible, it actually says multiple lines. It's like 4 or 5 lines later, all of you have fallen, great morning star, son of the dawn. A few lines later, this parable is, it actually says this parable is speaking of the king of Babylon. So people just pick and choose what they want. Oh, well, it's talking about a fallen angel. No, fucking 3 lines later, it says the parable that we just gave you is talking about the king of Babylon. Oh, well, I don't like that part. We're just going to shelf that and say it's an angel who had so much pride that he wanted to sit on the throne above God. No, you're starting to mix in Iblis of the Quran, who wanted to sit on the throne above God. You're now mixing him with the iconography of Lucifer, which never existed. People start to believe what they want to believe, but
and you've got that skewed, you know, with the language, but then also overarching, you've got this almost insatiable hunger to make the words say what you want them to say.
And it's okay to do that in one way. In one way, it's okay for it to speak to you individually.
In one way it is.
But don't preach to others that that's the fact.
That's right. When you're doing a translation of what was the meaning, the original meaning of that has no place. I mean, look at the Dead Sea Scrolls and the books, like the Gospel of Thomas. Mm-hmm. Well, we don't want that in there. Now, that's not, you know, that's
a little bit of a different story on Jesus. We don't like that.
Yeah, we don't need that. You know, the Gospel of Mary Magdalene. Mm-hmm. We don't need that in there. Now, she was a whore, and we're just not going to have that. She didn't have anything to do with the early church. They weren't married. We can't have any.
Yeah, they didn't like the fact that in the Gospel of Mary,
we can't have any of that. God cannot get married.
Says, why do you kiss her? And that's a weird line when you think about it. When you look at the Gospel of Mary, when they literally say to Jesus, why do you not love us the way that you love her? Why do you kiss her differently than you kiss us? Well, first off, I'm like, why the fuck is he kissing you anyway? You guys are grown men. That's weird. And I'm like, and why are you so worried about the way he's kissing her? I'm like, there's some weird orgiastic shit going on back then.
Well, now back then, it was quite common. If you look at the history itself, it was quite common to be greeted with a kiss. And the kiss was not on the cheek, not on the mouth. It was on the neck. And you can find different passages that always talk about when someone kisses someone, they lay a kiss upon their neck. That was kind of where the kiss on each side of the cheek came from, you know, years and years later. But that kiss, that is the same kiss that supposedly they have written in there that, you know, betrayed the Christ. But the Lady Babylon, one of the big things is the definition of Christ and what Christing was. Christing was delivering drugs. That's what Christing meant. And it was usually done by you could call him a priest, you could call him a high priest, you could call him, you know, a Magus, whatever you wanted to call them during that period of time. They were the leader of that group. And when they would Christ someone, they would give them a drug. And usually the drug was administered through the eyes because it was the easiest way to go into the system is through the eyelids itself. And so it would leave these like paint looks rolling down the cheek, almost like different colored tears. And it was from the interaction of the drug going into the eyes and then causing the eyes to water. And then that would run down the cheeks. So you could tell who was Christing and who wasn't. That's his theory, not mine. So, but it's very interesting if you start to really dig into that and you start to look at the way that the original Greek was written and what they're trying to say. One thing that I find really amusing, and I won't spoil it for you, is when the Jesus was found in the garden and was arrested, he was with a boy.
Yep.
Okay. They don't really say in the Bible today, King James or Schofield, anything about that. They just said that he was with someone and they ran away. The Greek interpretation of that was a child. So this opens up a whole another line of what was he doing with a child in the garden when the three dudes, when his three disciples were left to keep watch? And why was he so pissed off? Because they went to sleep. What was he doing exactly in the garden? Now, again, it's not my area of expertise. But when you start looking back, especially at someone that knows what the language meant, not just the words, okay? Anybody can get a Greek dictionary and look up word to word. That's not a language. The language is how the words are put together, how they're said, what the inflection is, where the actual verb and noun and things like that are placed in the sentence. All these things come together to have a different meaning. And obviously the church, the early church of Christ, they were trying to get a new religion off the ground, okay? You certainly would not want things like that in your new religion. How do you explain things like that? So it's just better to delete them. Just be done with it.
But it does beg the question, though, and I don't want to speak too much on this. Once again, I'm not trying to get banned at the moment, but if we are to believe, obviously, Lady Babylon's interpretation of Jesus being with a young child in the middle of the night in the garden, and several other things that he points out that talks about how he was always surrounded by men and always surrounded by young boys, then it's not a far stretch to say, well, then that kind of explains why the fact this religion has, on time and time again, thousands of times over, had priests who have been caught, arrested, or accused, or so forth, of being around little boys. It does make you think they're following the inner doctrine that we don't truly know about.
He actually has a theory for that. In the early church, and again, don't listen to me and my dates. Go straight to the source. Go and listen to what he has to say about it. And there are several scholars that agree on this. When the church was formalized and when it became a formal religion, and we're talking about as it was starting to splinter into what would be Catholicism and different pieces of it, the side of it that went from the Jesuits and into the Christian part, and this is documented, when boys were young, they would bring them as a group, part of their, I don't know if it would be a coronation or their, whatever the Catholics do when a child gets their candle and all that kind of stuff. The priests would hold them for 3 days in the church, and they would strip them. They would not feed them, not give them any water, and do quite heinous things to them. Why? So they would know what evil was, and they would know how to resist evil. If you're looking for evil tonight, there's your evil right there. There's your evil. Don't tell me about Satan and Satanas and all these things. That's a special kind of evil right there. Go and check it out. Don't take my word for it. It's pretty astounding stuff. You start to realize how this whole good and bad, thing comes together, and how manipulated people are with this book called the Bible, and also the Talmud and all these other authoritative books that have been interpreted and have additional information written by chosen rabbis or what have you. These whole things build a control system, and we're seeing today some of the things that have been hidden over time but have happened. Look at Epstein and all these different things. These things, that didn't just happen now. Those things don't just happen now. These things have been happening always. We're just seeing some of those things. And as a society, we've been too stupid to ask questions, or we've been too busy trying to earn a living and keep what little bit we've got, that we haven't had time to really look at it. But now it's right in the face.
Yeah, there's so much hidden that we don't know. And I mean, I know that some people agree with them, some people don't. We do have a comment here from Roger that says, I've heard of the guy, judge me not, but the guy, Lady Babylon, just doesn't jive right with Roger. He's more of a jive turkey CIA affiliate. I don't know if I would agree with that necessarily. I think he might just be a little crazy. Plus, the dude is talking about bringing back human dotes and antidotes. So he says a lot of different things. And like I said, do I agree with everything he says? Not necessarily, but do I think there's a lot of fruit there with a lot of what he says? Yes. And I mean, when we look at the administering of drugs in the original Christian faith, or any faith, I mean, it would be hard pressed for me to think that they weren't doing drugs, because pretty much every religion across the world was partaking in plant allies. Everyone. I mean, we look at the oracles of Delphi. We look at all the different religions back then, the pagan religions, which Christianity formed itself off of. That's the thing we don't seem to understand, is everything that Christianity was built off of older pagan religions. Everything from the crucified Christ man to the risen prophet to everything. It all comes from older faiths that existed prior to the inception of Christianity. And that's not opinion. That is historical fact. We know when Christianity emerged. We know of the religions prior to Christianity. They were saying the same fucking thing. So if they were to follow so many aspects of other religions and create their entire narrative to make their faith, which is fine, because that's what happens even in the modern world, guys. You are supposed to have your own lore. You're supposed to have your own faith base. You take how you interpret the things that you read, study, and experience in ritual, and you create your narrative. If you have a group, a coven, a cult, so forth, and you make your narrative, doesn't mean that you tout that on other people and say this is the only narrative. No, because it's how you've come to understand deeper meanings. But if they were to take all these different faiths and these different points and create their religion, drugs were used so heavily in so many cultures, it would be strange for me to think that they just completely cut that out.
Well, and snake venom was one of those things, and a lot of people believe that's where the serpent icon came from, especially if you look at is it the medical industry,
the staff of Hermes, the caduceus wand, with the serpents.
Well, if you were a doctor or you were about healing and you did not use snake venom, I'm just asking for a friend. Why the fuck would you put 2 snakes on your pole? it has to mean something. There has to be a meaning. People don't put things on icons. They don't create things for no reason.
Well, and a big thing
Why
right
not
there
put a
is,
cow on there? I mean, cow worship and bull worship was it was prevalent back then. So,
well, we'll look at two other things though, Aleister. I mean, if we look at obviously snakes being used, Moses in the desert held up a cross, and upon that cross was the brazen serpent. He held, and it's noted across multiple Christian texts and illustrations, Moses standing and his brother Aaron standing, well, not his brother Aaron, but Aaron, standing holding the cross with a serpent coiled all around the cross. So they were worshiping and bowing to the desert to a serpent upon a cross, the crucified serpent. Later on, and I've already talked about on my past episodes that Jesus and Moses are the same person, and it gets heavy as shit, but let's take that for a moment. Jesus was crucified on a cross. Jesus is signifying of a cross. When you look at the Gematrian sum of Messiah in serpent, they are the same number, 358. So it is saying that serpent and Messiah are the same number. They're the same thing. So the serpent or the serpent venom is the Messiah. And Messiah, Christ, is Christos. Christos means to anoint. So you are being anointed by the venom of the serpent to awaken to the higher consciousness. Now, also the serpent in the Garden of Eden could be a devil, could be this evil force, or could be this savior that freed us from the prison of Yahweh, if we want to look at it that way. But we could also look at it from another point of view and look at it that it is drugs, guys. Eat upon the fruit. What kind of fruit was it? Was it from a tree that we don't know? Because there's a lot of plant allies that have fruit or things and roots that you eat and you trip and you have experiences with higher planes of existence. So the narrative of you eat of me, or you eat of the fruit and you surely will not die. You eat of the fruit and you will become like gods, knowing the difference of good and evil. Well, that could be, you are just a mundane creature who only has the experience of the little bit of life you understand, and you're not supposed to eat of the fruit. You eat of the fruit and boom, consciousness explodes, and you're seeing rainbows and geometric shapes, and you're having conversations with a higher source beyond the higher source that's oppressing you. Now you're saying, I am the only God. There is no other God but me. But now I just tripped balls, and I'm hearing from something up here that I can tell is above you. Now I'm starting to doubt you a little bit, and that could be a problem. So there's a lot of correlative understanding that a lot of the things talked about in Christianity and all faiths are talking about different forms of hallucinogenics or entheogens, because if you're using a hallucinogen in a ritual context or a spiritual context, it's not to get high and party from. It is to come into contact with higher source. So that's an entheogen.
It's a higher state.
Yeah, it's a higher state of consciousness.
Yep.
And that's what most faiths did. Talk about stained glass windows and illustrations earlier showing mushrooms. That's not an opinion, guys. Go back and look. You see it time and time again. Mushrooms. There's a phenomenal book. And I don't have it in front of me, unfortunately. While I'm talking and rambling, I'll see if I can find it real quick. It is a book specifically talking about Jesus and mushrooms.
Let me ask you about something while you're looking for that book.
Certainly.
So, what if we go one step further, and while Eve is administering this drug to Adam, perhaps afterward they have intercourse. And that in itself is another symbol of partaking of the forbidden fruit.
Yep.
And my question is, why would this God, why would he give the pain of childbirth to the woman if it wasn't something related to some kind of sexual or some kind of thing related to that? Why would, just out of the blue, why not, give her a tail? Why not give her, the endless crotch itch? Instead, you'll bring forth children through pain. What? Where'd that come from? Well, Adam's over there pissing on a tree. She gets this. So maybe there's some symbology that the authors were trying to write. I don't believe in any of it, quite honestly. But I think it was written for a certain reason. And it also gives a good argument for, if you want to tie something really weird in here, let's just go for broke and let's look at extraterrestrial. The Bible says we made man in our image. Come, let us do these things. Well, I thought it was just one God. Are there multiple gods? Is there a whole group of gods? Is there a herd of gods? Why would this person be saying, let us do these things, if there wasn't more than one? So is that supposed to be the angels of heaven? Well, what would God want to include the angels in this big important thing of making something out of nothing? He wouldn't need their help. He wouldn't want their help. But keep saying, let us do these things. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that, Crow?
It's interesting. I mean, we talked before about the Fingerprints of the Gods, which is a book that I talked about, I think, on one of the last either episode or the episode before that, which is an awesome book. And it talks about all these cultures over time in ancient times all depicted these beings that came and rode dragons. And they talked about them coming across the seas in big metal dragons, pretty much. And they oftentimes were pale skinned in cultures that never seen a white man ever, and they would see a white man, not our color, but like pale, albino almost. And they would be riding these machines that they were calling dragons that breathed fire, and they would impart all this wisdom on mankind, and they would give them understanding of pretty much philosophy and the liberal arts and of gemstones. And so then you start looking and say, well, then you say, well, wait a second, that's the Grigori Watchers. That's the starting of the Nephilim whenever these beings came. So then you say, well, maybe the biblical and Hebraic understandings of the Grigori Watchers falling and sleeping with the daughters of man and imparting all these wisdoms to us were actually extraterrestrial aliens that came from another planet, slept with earthlings, created some hybrid race that made these new beings, the Nephilim, and they imparted all kinds of wisdom. They rewrote our DNA. And then something else, maybe along the lines, maybe even them again came back and changed it because they said, oh, we fucked up. We slept with these things. Now they're a little too smart or whatever have you. We're going to go ahead and alter that DNA a little bit. Or was it another race that came along and didn't like the fact that these new creatures were becoming something? So it begs, it gives a lot to certainly dive deep into. Now, I want to say The Sacred Mushroom and the Cross by John M. Allegro. Great book where he talks specifically about how the whole faith of Christianity is based on magic mushrooms. And he gives a lot of deep dive into different things that really correlate. It was really thought-provoking book. Some people love it. Some people hate it. That's with anything. When even like we said, Lady Babylon, there's going to be a lot of people that love and say, I dig this dude. There's going to be a lot of people say, fuck this guy. You're going to have it both ways. But either way, guys, I've always said, it's about your place of pivot. And you should study multiple places of pivot. Stand 20 different places. Understand it from 20 different perspectives. And then through all of those, come to what you believe. But now you know the ideas of other groups, the ideas of other people, and the other possibilities. Because if you only stick with that one, you think you're doing yourself a service. You're doing yourself a disservice because you don't understand deeply. But now you have everything you need to make a true educated decision and understanding. And Roger actually just dropped a comment right now. The phonics of farm and farm are interesting to me. As far as I know, forgive my noviceness to the Greek, but there are possibly 3 words for drugs or pharma chaos or pharma chaos being one. I can't tell you because I don't speak Greek. A person to ask, to be honest with you, even before I would go to Amon of Lady Babylon, is I would probably talk to Balkadmon first. Balkadmon speaks about 9 different languages, phenomenal writer, phenomenal mystic, and he has expounded tons on his courses. We were just talking about the Watchers. He has a brand new course, ironically, great segue, on the Watchers and the Grigori Angels, and he talks about the fall of them. He talks on courses of the 72 demons of the name, the 72 angels of the name. He talks about Egypt. He has a course for so many different things that I have never found anyone offering courses that are as well put together, as deep dived as his. There's no one that can take his course and not walk away and be like, holy shit, did I just learn a ton? And this is from someone who's very well studied. So, Roger, I would say look into his courses just to see what he has to offer. Now, it might not be specifically on the pharmacology side, obviously, but this is someone who knows Greek very well, who knows Aramaic, Hebrew, Latin, all kinds of different languages, and can compare them back and forth, and really will change your life on some things. Like I said, with the whole Lucifer conundrum, I already knew that, but to hear his version and hear how deep he went on it, I'm like, holy shit, bro. All right. So a few more questions and then we'll wrap this up. We didn't even go through many of the questions. We're just chit chatting and I love it. Sometimes that's the best episodes for me, is whenever I'm kind of going off script, which is nice. Let's see what we want to pick out of this, because I was following a flow, but we deviated. Let's see. So one of the things we'll talk about, we kind of went into the earlier, you are a leader, obviously, of a cult or a coven, and you are someone who's very notable in the, side of diabolism and Satanism. How do you approach spiritual leadership without slipping into dogma? Because I know you said there for a while you felt kind of like things were getting stale and maybe you could be heading towards dogma. You took a back seat, and then everything came together with this new spirit, your new book, and you kind of have a new life to you. So how do you approach spiritual leadership without slipping into that?
A couple of different ways. First of all, I get bored very easy. I don't know if I'm autistic, or I don't think I am, but I have a lot of those characteristics in the fact that I have to be stimulated. And if I don't like what I'm doing, I get bored with it. And when I get bored with it, I walk away from it. I don't have a very long attention span. So in looking at trying to keep things fresh, I change things, and my entire group does that. Now, we have 2 covens. If you look at, one is a physical. We meet in person. We have been together for decades, and we will probably die out when we're all gone. This coven, the physical, will end. Then I have a virtual coven where people can come and they can participate. I have rituals and things like that we do. We have a ritual coming up for Samhain, and I'll be recording that one. That will probably come out in 2 weeks, where people can kind of come along for the ride. It'll be recorded, and they can play it over and over if they want to do that. I'm not going to put it behind a paywall or anything like that. So, but I always look for something different to answer your question. The only way that I keep things fresh is by constantly changing and evolving. And I think that's because of my attention span. And I just happen to connect with like-minded individuals for our physical coven that are like that. And we always change things up. Like, for instance, we will do rituals in our sanctum. We have a physical sanctum in a building that we go to, but we'll also do it outside. We've got a wonderful little island that we like to go to for special rituals. It's in the Intracoastal Waterway, and we put in, if people are familiar with Honeymoon Island, there are several little islands around there, and we put our kayaks in. We put everything that we need in our kayaks, and we go out. We'll have a ritual on one of those little islands, and we may spend the night out there and just get up the next morning and have breakfast. We carry everything that we need. that keeps it fresh.
Agreed.
That keeps the connection up, because everything that we do is closely personally connected with each other. And we always approach it as trying to make the other person's experience the best that it can possibly be. And approaching it like that keeps the dogma out. Now, over time, especially if we have not got together for a while, one of our members was in the hospital for a while. I had some health issues that I went through. And, we could not get together. Well, sometimes when you're practicing by yourself, or you're getting together with the same person over and over again because other people are not available, dogma can creep in. And that's what I was experiencing. And others were experiencing it too when I was out of pocket going through my ordeal. And the best thing to do is open your mind to the possibilities and try something different. Try a different location. Try going outside. If you're always in your sanctum, even try moving your sanctum around. I do that a lot when I'm writing episodes for YouTube. If I come in and I sit at my desk and I'm not getting something going in a while, I'll try going outside and see if that works. I'll go work in the garden for a little while and see if that kickstarts things. If I am in a real rut, I'll rearrange the office. So I'll move my desk around here where it's facing over here, move everything over here, and this, that, and the other. And that seems to kickstart the creative process for me, something different. And I have at times gone to the extent, especially when I was working on previous books, of going to a hotel, just getting a hotel room down in Clearwater. Although I lived right on the beach at St. Pete Beach, right across the street there from the beach, I would still sometimes just go get a hotel where I didn't have to cook, didn't have to clean, didn't have to make the bed, didn't have to worry about any of that. All I had to do was write. And I could write at the pool, I could write in my room, I could just go out and find a bench somewhere and write. That helps kickstart the creative process for me. So I don't know if that answered your question or not.
No, it did, and it actually
answered my
answered
process.
No, that answered that question and the next one I was going to ask you, which I always love when we get two out at the same time. So the next question was going to be, how do you navigate mundane life while engaging in intense spiritual practice? And I think really you answered it there. It's finding ways to keep it fresh. You do your everyday life, but you incorporate that spirituality in your life. And as you said, a big thing for me too is traveling. I think I find a lot of inspiration when I'm in other states, when I'm in other areas, when I'm on the road. A lot of inspiration hits me, and you have different experiences which help influence later writings, later workings, and I think that's important. Guys, if you're not going outside and practicing, and you only have ever practiced in your temple, I know some people living in big cities like New York City and things like that, it's really hard to go out into the woods. I get it. And sometimes it might not be safe. But on those chances you can, or if you were in an area where you can, I push hard for you to do so. I am very, very, very big on going out and doing rituals in the middle of the forest, doing rituals, in the cemetery. Be careful about it because obviously you're not allowed to. Doing rituals in places where you're safe, where you're not harming anything. You take with you what you brought. Do not destroy the earth. Do not destroy the areas. Have respect, but go out and have powerful experiences. Because I will tell you, there's times in the forest that I've had rituals that I have experienced so mind-boggling of events that it'll shape your life forever. Same thing with the cemetery. I have seen a plethora of beings show up in the cemetery where I certainly was not alone, and I could visibly see multiple things standing watching me do ritual. And it just starts to open up this whole different perspective of ritual, of your spirituality, of how you interact with spirits. and it's beautiful. So I certainly advise to do that. Now, let's go ahead and look here. Can you elaborate? And this will be one of our, I think, 3 questions left, and we'll do these more rapid fire. But can you elaborate on the necessity of embracing both darkness and light within your practice?
Well, again, it goes back to what is light and dark. So, kind of goes back to the way we recognize light and darkness is the way that we recognize white magic and black magic. No difference between the two. There's only the perception of light and dark. If you're talking about subject matter, in looking at, well, let's look at an example would be if you were to perform a sacrifice and you were to do a blood sacrifice. We do blood sacrifices. We use our own blood in doing that. Some people might see that as being a dark act or something like black magic. But it's not really. It's a very light. It's a positive act, because what we're doing is we're using our ultimate sacrifice of our own essence during the ritual. It's the same thing that happens when you fast before ritual. You're sacrificing something that you need in order for something to happen. Everything in the world is quid pro quo, something for something. That's an immutable law. Many times things happen because you give something or you do something, and that is a chain excuse me, a chain reaction that causes something else to happen. Had you not done that or give that, that other act would not happen. So I don't know, did I answer your question with that?
You did, absolutely.
Okay.
And then second to last question here is going to be, if you could leave one parting truth for the seeker walking the infernal path, what would it be?
Question everything and evaluate as much as you possibly can. Don't read just my books. Don't watch just my videos. Watch other people's videos. Listen to what they say. Read their books. Try to understand as many different aspects and facets of different people's journeys, because basically what's going to happen, at least in my experience, is what made me happy was a mixing of different things over time that has made up our version of theistic Satanism for Magnum Opus. It wasn't something that we inherited from someone. It was things that we liked, things that worked, things that were effective, and it kind of came together like that. So don't be quick to discard someone, even if they are kind of kooky or, listen to what they have to say. There's always a good tidbit in there that you can take away, even if you don't agree with everything they say.
100%. And I want to showcase real quick, Ureli said, much love, dear Magus and Brother Crow. Good to see two of the most awesome people. Well, thank you. Much love to you for the support of both of us. It has been appreciated over the years, so thank you.
I love you, dear sister. She lives in New Orleans now. Shout out to New Orleans. Yeah. I've known her for years. She was one of the first people that I ever interviewed. I brought her on my channel because of her story. She has a very powerful story as well. So thank you, dear sister.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your journey, for your support and love of everything that we do. I know that you've certainly been a huge supporter, so thank you. Last question of the night, brother. How can those drawn to your teachings and work reach out or explore the Magnum Opus further?
Probably the easiest way is to go to my Patreon, patreon.com/Satanism. Very straightforward. The second would be go to my website, AleisterNacht.com. And it's spelled just like it is on the screen. I had some guy on Facebook made a comment to something I had said and said, "You don't even know how to spell your own name. It's I before E." And I'm like, fuck off, dude. It's my name.
How you gonna
What
tell
are
me how
you,
to
the
spell my
grammar
name?
police or something? It's like another example of someone. And then he made some comment like, well, Lucifer wants to teach the newbies. Well, I had a YouTube channel years ago, and I basically got banned. So yeah, I don't have a whole lot of followers, but I'm definitely not a child. So thanks for that feedback. Haven't received anything quite like that before, so that was different.
Oh, there's always a few, isn't there?
Yeah, I found it kind of amusing, but hey, it's all good. It's all good.
Well, perfect. Well, you heard it, folks. Make sure you check out Aleister's books. You can pick them up today, online. I ask that you do so. There's a lot of great fruit in them, so make sure you do that, including his new book. And make sure you check out the Patreon. Make sure you check out his different videos he releases on YouTube, not only his lessons and teachings, but also his podcast as well. You'll see a lot of great guests, a lot of great conversations. Shameless plug, a few weeks back, I was on there. You can check out an episode where me, as well as the High Priestess of the Coterie of Samil, Natasha Michelle, was on there on her own separate episode. So you can check that out as well. Lots of great conversation, lots of things that we spitball back and forth. So
those were great episodes. And speaking of the power of Satanas, I never dreamed that the blog that I started in 2011, just a couple days ago on the 1st, yesterday, was the anniversary of starting my written blog. And that's how most people came to know me. I didn't do videos or anything like that. That was in 2011. That has over 2 million views.
That's awesome, brother.
I never could have dreamed about that. And of course, my Spotify and different, you can pretty much get my podcast on any platform worldwide. And so that to me that's another example of, if you step up, if you do it, and you do it for the right reason, he'll take it and he will make it bigger than you ever could have yourself. It's a testament to him.
It is. No, I think that's beautiful. You heard it, folks. Believe, trust in the process, give honor, you'll receive it back. And from time to time, you might just need a little bit of help from a hoodoo saint to step in and to change your path. I love it. It's beautiful. Like you said, 2 million. Think of all the people's lives you touched because of the decisions you made at that crossroad. I love that.
Yeah, it's humbling. It really is. And life is just like that. Life is really truly random. And when it presents itself, step through the door. Even, don't think about it too much. Step through the door, because some of the best things that have happened in my life have been accidents. Really. That's the way I wrote my first book. We needed a handbook for the coven because we got tired of saying the same thing over and over again. That's how the first book came to be. Totally by accident. No one else wanted to do it, so I did it.
There you go. And look what it turned into.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, you heard it, folks. Like I said, make sure you check out Aleister, show him love, spread his work around, check out the other episodes that he's recently put out. And with that, we will say good night. As our night draws to a close, we thank Aleister Nacht for sharing his infernal wisdom and the dark illumination of the Magnum Opus path. May the insights of the evening light your way through the shadows and challenge you to embrace the fullness of your own path. Until we meet again beneath the banner of the Nephilim, walk boldly and question everything. We'll see you next time. I'm Frater Crow, signing out.